He didn't bark. He didn't whimper. He just waited. In the corner of an animal shelter in Evergreen Hollow, a German shepherd named Ranger sat silently, eyes fixed on the door. He wasn't just looking for someone. He was waiting for her. A little girl who hadn't spoken a word in months, and a boy haunted by the memory of letting him go. What happens when a dog torn between two hearts teaches everyone that love doesn't divide it, multiplies? This is the story of Ranger. The wind swept low through Evergreen Hollow, rustling dry pine needles and clattering half-melted icicles from the eaves of the low buildings that dotted the town. It was early spring in Colorado, but winter hadn't quite loosened its grip. Dirty snowbanks lined the sidewalks, and a haze of gray clouds hung thick over the wooded hills. The sky was quiet, sullen. Olivia? Mitchell pulled her scarf tighter around her face as she stepped out of her car, slamming the door shut with her elbow. The air bit at her cheeks. Evergreen Paws. Animal Shelter stood at the end of an old fire road just outside of town, surrounded by a pine forest that crept right up to the chain-link fence. The building itself was modest, one-story pale, wood siding, metal roof, but it was warm inside, and for Olivia it had become more than a workplace. It was her safe zone, her place of retreat. At 28, Olivia looked younger than she felt. Her face still carried the round softness of youth, but her eyes, deep brown and framed by faint shadows, betrayed an old sorrow. Since her brother Jesse died in a hiking accident last spring, she had stopped painting, stopped writing, stopped sleeping well. Her world had narrowed into silence, and the only place that made sense anymore was here among animals that didn't ask questions. She'd started as a volunteer, scooping litter and folding towels. Then, one day, she was helping manage the shelter's social media. Then came full-time hours. Now she practically lived there. Olivia didn't mind. She told herself it was healing, that every dog she bathed, every cat she cradled was a little step forward. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. Grief had no clock. This morning, Hank had texted her, "New intake this morning. Might be one you want to see." Hank Morrison, the shelter's co-director, was in his early 60s, tall with a frame that had long ago settled into stubborn sturdiness. His silver beard, always neatly trimmed, softened his otherwise gruff demeanor. He had worked with animals longer than Olivia had been alive. And though he rarely showed excitement, the fact that he had messaged her at all made Olivia curious. She passed the front desk where Marcy Delgado, a fellow staffer with bright blonde hair, a loud laugh, and a tendency to over-caffeinate, was filing adoption papers. Marcy gave a distracted wave as Olivia walked by, boots squeaking against the recently mopped floors. The intake wing was quieter than the main kennel and colder. A loose ceiling vent whined in the corner. Olivia walked past cages of mewling kittens and a pit bull pup, snoring with its tongue hanging out. Then she reached Kennel 4 and stopped. He was sitting in the far corner, perfectly still. A German shepherd, large and healthy-looking, though slightly underfed. His fur was the classic black and tan, though dulled by recent days outdoors. His ears stood tall, his back straight, as if he'd placed himself there deliberately, and his eyes amber watchful, fixed on her with calm intensity. Not fear, not aggression, just observation. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. Most new arrivals at Evergreen Paws reacted in predictable ways. The younger dogs barked, wagged, leapt at the gate. The older ones slunk into the corners, eyes down, bodies trembling. This one was different. He didn't bark. He didn't move. He simply waited. The clipboard, clipped to the kennel gate, read, "Name. Ranger assigned. Estimated age, 6 years. Breed, German Shepherd. Intake, status, found near Glacier. Point, trailhead. No collar, no chip, no visible injuries." brought in by Hiker. Olivia crouched down slowly, careful not to startle him. "Hey there, Ranger," she said softly, letting her voice settle into the stillness of the room. "You look like you've been out there a while." He didn't respond, not even a twitch, but his gaze didn't waver either. "You're not afraid, are you?" she murmured. She stayed like that for a minute, maybe longer. Ranger remained statue still. Then, quietly, he shifted. Not toward her, not away, but his eyes dipped slightly. His ears relaxed. He blinked once, slowly, and Olivia felt it. That click. It wasn't affection. Not yet, but it was a connection. A mutual understanding, however faint. Behind her, a door creaked open. She turned her head and saw Hank approaching his boots, muffled on the rubber matting. "He hasn't made a sound," he said. Voice low. "Came in early this morning. Calm as the snow. Didn't fight, didn't bark. Just walked in like he'd been here before." Olivia stood brushing dust from her knees. "He looks like he's waiting." Hank nodded. "Yeah, that's what I thought too. Any idea where he came from?" "Not a clue. No microchip, but he's no stray. Look at the muscle on him. Someone trained this boy. Someone cared for him. Once." Olivia looked back at Ranger. He was still sitting still, watching the door. "I don't think he's here for a fresh start," she said quietly. Hank raised a brow. No, she repeated. I think he's still expecting someone." There was a long pause. Then Hank sighed. "Well, let's hope that someone knows what they lost." He left her there, standing by the kennel. She lingered another 10 minutes before finally heading back toward her office. But her mind stayed behind with the dog, who didn't act like he'd been abandoned, but like someone who had chosen to stay behind. The morning light filtered softly through the frost-covered windows of Evergreen Paws. The sky outside was overcast, a dull blanket of gray, holding back the sun, and the air was dry with the brittle chill of early March. Olivia Mitchell sat at her desk with her hands hovering over her keyboard, a steaming cup of black coffee beside her forgotten. She had been staring at the photo for 10 minutes. Ranger, silent proud, still gazing through the kennel bars with that same quiet dignity he'd held since arriving. His amber eyes were unblinking deep, as though they held entire stories behind them. Olivia couldn't explain the feeling, but something about him haunted her in a good way, as if he weren't lost, only paused, waiting to resume something important. She pulled in a long breath and opened the shelter's social media dashboard. Typing. The post was harder than usual. She wanted to get it right. Not just facts, but something that might reach the person this dog was waiting for. She wrote slowly, choosing each word with care. "This is Ranger. He came to Evergreen Paws 3 days ago. No collar, no chip, no one looking for him. But we're convinced he's not lost. He's waiting for someone. For something. If you've ever known a dog who listens with his eyes, who sits with stillness instead of panic, you'll understand why. Ranger isn't just another rescue. If you recognize him or know someone who might please contact us. Sometimes a dog doesn't need a new home. Sometimes he's trying to find his way back to one." She attached the photo, hit post, and sat back. The story started slow. A few likes, a couple of shares. But then a comment rolled in. Then another, and then a third, tagging someone else. Within 2 hours, the post had over 300 shares. By the afternoon, it had crossed over 1,000. Comments came from nearby towns, some from people as far as Utah and New Mexico. People speculated on Ranger's breed, praised his noble face, and many offered to adopt him if no one claimed him. But that wasn't what caught Olivia's eye. It was a comment from a local account. "This dog looks exactly like the one who used to walk with a little boy down Maple Lane. They passed my house every day. The boy always talked to him like he was his best friend." The account name was Edith Delaney. Olivia clicked on it. A public profile, posts about garden tomatoes and crosswords. A bio that read, "Retired, always watching birds and people." And a photo of an elderly woman with silver hair, deep laugh lines, and a gentle smile. Olivia sent a message immediately. "Hi, Ms. Delaney. I work at Evergreen Paws. I saw your comment about the boy on Maple Lane. Could we speak more? Do you remember anything else about them, or about the dog?" Within 15 minutes, a reply arrived. "Yes, I do. They passed by my house often last summer. The dog looked just like your Ranger. The boy, I think his name was Liam, was very attached to him. Sweet kid, maybe 9 or 10, he always had his backpack on. He'd talk to the dog like they were telling secrets. I remember, because, well, the dog looked like he understood. Then, one day they stopped coming. I asked his neighbor, and she said the boy's father had passed. After that, they moved, I'm not sure where. But I remember that dog. I'd recognize those eyes anywhere." Olivia's heart clenched. She turned back toward Ranger's kennel visible through the window near her desk. He was lying down now, his head resting between his front paws, staring forward with that same unreadable patience. So, that was it. There had been someone, not just someone, a child. A grieving child, and Ranger wasn't just a pet. He was something more. A companion through heartbreak. A secret keeper. A lifeline. Now that boy was gone and Ranger had somehow returned, but he hadn't forgotten. The air in Evergreen Hollow had warmed just enough to soften the ice clinging to the gutters, and small streams of meltwater trickled down the curbs. Olivia Mitchell drove slowly down Maple Lane, passing homes lined with skeletal trees and yards still sleeping under winter's shadow. Her thoughts circled the name that had lingered since yesterday. Liam Walker, and the story shared by Miss Delaney about the boy who once walked a dog that listened like a friend. She parked outside a weathered blue house at number 112. The front steps sagged slightly and a porch swing creaked in the wind. The windows were covered but not boarded. It didn't look abandoned, just left behind. She knocked once, then again. No answer. Before she turned to go, a door creaked open across the street. A man stepped onto his porch in plaid pajama pants and a flannel jacket. He was in his 50s, short and stout, with a thick beard and sharp, observant eyes. He didn't wave, just watched with mild curiosity. Olivia crossed the street, keeping her tone polite but direct. "Hi, sorry to bother you. I work at Evergreen Paws. I'm looking for the family who used to live at number 112, the Walkers. I believe they had a dog named Ranger." The man's expression shifted slightly, the corner of his mouth tightening. "Chelsea Walker. She lived there with her kids. Good woman. Hard life. Do you know what happened to them?" Olivia asked gently. He leaned on the porch railing, the wood groaning under his weight. "Her husband died a couple years back, some kind of cancer. Left her with 2 kids. Liam and Katie. Liam was the quiet one. Always walking that German. Shepherd and talking to him like they shared secrets." Olivia nodded. "Do you remember the dog?" "Yeah, big one. Smart Ranger, right? And the other Max, the older dog. Old Mutt, with cloudy eyes, moved like his bones were made of gravel." "What happened to them?" she asked. "Max passed last summer. I saw them bury him out back. Liam cried for hours. After that, Ranger changed, used to sit on the porch for hours just watching. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't play. Sometimes he'd run off down the trail behind the house and come back days later dirty and hungry. Then one day, he didn't come back at all." Olivia's voice softened. "Did they look for him?" "They did. But not like you think. Chelsea told me he didn't belong there anymore. Not after Max died. She said Ranger needed a new place. A fresh start. Somewhere he wouldn't keep grieving." Olivia bit her lip, so she let him go. She did what she thought was best. The man said they were struggling. Barely had enough to stay afloat. Sometimes loving something means letting it go even if it breaks your heart. She wrote a few notes in her journal. Did they say where they were going? The man shook his head, packed up quick. Maybe staying with family, maybe trying to find steady work. Haven't seen them since the holidays. Olivia looked back at the blue house. It felt hollow now, like an echo, but she understood something she hadn't before. Ranger hadn't been abandoned out of cruelty. He had been let go by people who believed he needed more than they could give. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded, already turning to go back inside. "If you see that dog, tell him Liam still thinks about him. I could tell." She drove back to the shelter slowly, the streets blurring in the wet gleam of melting snow. Inside, she stopped by Kennel 4. Ranger stood as she approached. His eyes met hers, not desperate, not frightened, just expectant. "I found them," she whispered. "I know where you came from." She didn't add anything else. Ranger didn't need the words. That evening, Olivia sat at her desk with her notebook open, but didn't write. She simply watched the snowfall begin again, through the window, soft and slow, and let herself feel the ache that came with knowing that some homes are left not out of neglect, but out of love. Too complicated for words. The early light of morning spilled across the pine-lined streets of Evergreen Hollow, painting gold along rooftops dusted with frost. Inside the modest brick apartment above the laundromat, Rachel Howard poured a cup of tea with one hand and scanned her phone with the other. Her dark hair was pulled into a loose bun, and her soft blue sweater hung a bit too big on her slender frame, worn from years of wear. Her eyes, though warm, were shadowed with exhaustion, the kind that came from years of holding everything together on her own. Rachel was 34, a medical receptionist by day, and a mother every hour in between. Since the divorce, she'd moved back to Evergreen Hollow with her daughter Ellie, hoping the slower pace would help them both breathe again. But the peace she'd hoped for had not come easily. Ellie, once an energetic and expressive child, had retreated into a world of silence and worry. Diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. 6 months ago, she had stopped playing piano, stopped drawing, stopped laughing. Only her therapy dog Milo, assigned during family counseling, had ever seemed to truly ground her. But Milo had gone to live with her father after the custody split. That loss had taken something vital from Ellie. This morning, Rachel had stumbled upon a shared post from the Evergreen Paws Animal Shelter. A German shepherd, still and solemn looking through the screen, with eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 untold stories. She read the caption twice. "He's not lost, he's waiting." Rachel didn't know why, but she felt her fingers tremble as she turned the screen toward her daughter. "Ellie, sweetheart," she said gently, "do you want to come see something?" The girl curled up on the couch with a blanket over her knees, peeked up. Ellie. Howard was 10 small for her age, with long strawberry blonde hair that always fell into her eyes. She wore an oversized hoodie and pajama pants with faded dinosaurs on them. She hadn't spoken much in recent days, preferring to communicate with head nods and tiny gestures. Rachel knelt beside her. "His name is Ranger. He doesn't have a family right now." Ellie blinked, then reached out for the phone. Her thumb hovered over the photo, then slowly slid across the screen to see more. Her breathing slowed. Rachel didn't miss the way her shoulders relaxed slightly, or how her fingers didn't fidget like they usually did. "You want to meet him?" Rachel asked softly. A nod. By noon, they had arrived at the shelter. The building was quiet today, with only a few volunteers tending to morning cleaning rounds. Olivia Mitchell sat behind the front desk, organizing intake folders when the door chimed open. She glanced up and offered her usual practiced smile. Rachel stepped inside first, then gently guided Ellie forward. "Hi, I'm Rachel Howard." I saw your post about Ranger." Olivia straightened, quickly recognizing them from the email inquiry she'd seen an hour earlier. "Of course, thank you for coming." "You must be Ellie," she added, looking toward the girl. Ellie didn't answer, but glanced toward the hallway, her fingers tightening slightly around her mom's sleeve. "She's shy," Rachel said, "but she used to work with a therapy dog. It really helped." "Would you like to meet him?" Olivia asked. Ellie gave a barely visible nod. Olivia led them down the side corridor toward the intake kennels. Ranger had been moved to a quieter corner to help with his adjustment. As they approached, Ranger was standing, ears twitching at the sound of approaching steps. Rachel stopped short when she saw him. Oh, even she felt it something in the way the dog looked at them. Not excited, not wary, but simply aware. Observant Olivia unlocked the kennel and opened it slowly. "We usually give first-timers some distance," she explained. Ranger stepped forward cautiously, then stopped, his gaze locked on Ellie. The girl didn't speak. She knelt carefully and held out a hand, palm down, letting it rest just above the concrete floor. Ranger moved, he walked, not rushed, not slow, until he reached her, then lowered his head beneath her hand. Not pushing, not licking, simply accepting, like a weight falling into place. Rachel gasped. She hadn't seen Ellie this still, this calm in months. Ellie's fingers moved gently to his ears, her touch feather-light. Ranger closed his eyes. Olivia, watching from a quiet distance, felt a chill move through her. Not fear, something else. Something like awe. Rachel swallowed hard. It's like she knows him, or he knows her. They've both lost something, Olivia said quietly. A moment later, Ellie leaned into Ranger's neck. Her lips moved. A whisper. Rachel didn't catch the word, but Olivia did. "Safe." The three women said nothing for several seconds. Then Olivia turned to Rachel. "We're not rushing anything, but if you're open to it, we could arrange a few more visits. See how it goes." "Yes," Rachel said immediately. "Please." They stayed another 30 minutes. Ellie never once looked around, never flinched, never shut down. And when it was time to go, Ranger watched them leave without whining, but with his gaze fixed steadily on Ellie as if promising he'd remember. That evening, back at home, Rachel found Ellie sitting on the floor of her bedroom with her sketchbook open for the first time in weeks. She was drawing something, lines sharp and certain. Rachel peeked over her shoulder. It was Ranger. And next to him, a small girl with strawberry blonde hair. Their heads touched. The afternoon sun filtered lazily through the glass windows of evergreen paws, casting soft golden patterns on the tiled floor of the visitors' lounge. It was a gentle light, the kind that made silence feel warm instead of lonely. Olivia Mitchell sat curled on the edge of the bench with her laptop open on her knees, fingers dancing across the keys. Her posture was relaxed, but her expression focused, eyebrows occasionally knitting in thought. She had been writing for the past week, short reflections really, about what it meant to witness connection unfold between strangers. The working title of her blog was simple but heartfelt, Ranger and the Hearts He Connects. She wasn't sure who would read it. Maybe a few animal lovers. Maybe no one. But something inside her said these stories deserved to be told. Today's draft was about Ellie, the quiet girl who had started smiling again. She doesn't speak much, Olivia wrote, but the day she placed her hand on Ranger's head, something inside her shifted. Not like a door swinging open. More like a crack of light seeping in from underneath, quiet but certain. She paused to sip her coffee when a voice broke the silence from the front desk. "Olivia, there's a family here to see you." She looked up. Hank stood in the hallway holding a clipboard. His expression was unreadable. "Did they say who they were?" He nodded, then hesitated. They said they used to be Ranger's family. Olivia's heart kicked once in her chest. She stood quickly, closing the laptop without a second thought, and made her way to the reception area. Standing by the desk were 3 people, 2 adults and a teenage boy. The man was tall with sandy hair and a short beard, wearing a worn brown jacket. The woman beside him had tired eyes and a nervous energy in the way she clutched her purse strap. And the boy, he was the one Olivia recognized first from the descriptions from the way Ranger had once been described looking at him. Liam Walker, now 13. He had grown tall but still had the same soft, hesitant gaze. His hands were stuffed into the front pocket of his hoodie, and his sneakers squeaked slightly as he shifted his weight. "You're Olivia?" the woman asked. Her voice was strained but kind. "Yes," Olivia said. "You must be the Walkers." "I'm Chelsea," the mother said. "This is my son Liam. We heard about Ranger. We weren't expecting to, but someone sent us a link to your post." Liam looked up briefly. "It was the blog," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Olivia blinked. "You read it?" He nodded. "I didn't know how to explain it." Chelsea added, "We didn't come to claim him. We just wanted to see him, if that's allowed." Olivia studied them for a moment. There was no sense of entitlement in their tone, only a quiet hope, tentative, almost guilty. She nodded. "He's in the courtyard. I'll take you." As they walked through the shelter, Chelsea explained what had happened. After Max died, everything changed. Ranger wasn't the same. Liam blamed himself for a long time. He didn't say it out loud, but I could tell. And when Ranger disappeared, it was like losing Max all over again. Liam walked in silence beside her, eyes cast down. When they entered the courtyard, Ranger was lying beneath the tall pine tree that shaded the far bench he had taken to that spot in recent days, preferring the quiet over the buzz of indoor traffic. His ears twitched as the gate clicked open. Then slowly he turned his head and saw Liam. Olivia held her breath. Ranger didn't bolt. He didn't bark. He simply stood, his head lifting tail, motionless. His posture was alert but unsure, like someone who remembered a song but not the words. Liam stepped forward, hesitating halfway. Then he knelt down and whispered, "I'm sorry, boy, I didn't want to leave you." Ranger's body tensed, his eyes locked with the boy's. Then slowly, deliberately, he crossed the space between them. He didn't leap. He didn't whine. But he placed his head gently against Liam's chest and stayed there. Chelsea wiped her eyes behind them. Olivia turned away to give them space, her chest full. Later that day, Rachel arrived with Ellie for their regular visit. The girl had changed in subtle but important ways. She greeted Olivia now with a quiet "hi" and asked to help fill Ranger's water bowl. At school, her teacher had emailed to say Ellie had volunteered to read aloud during group time, something unimaginable just 2 weeks ago. When Ellie saw Ranger sitting calmly beside Liam on the grass, she froze. Ranger looked up. He stood, trotted over to her without hesitation and gently brushed against her hand. The unspoken question passed between the 2 children, their eyes meeting. "Who are you to him?" Olivia knelt beside them. "Ellie, this is Liam. He used to take care of Ranger." Liam looked shy but offered a small wave. "He's yours now?" he asked. Ellie glanced at her mother, unsure. Rachel approached with a careful smile. "She visits often. They've become close." Liam nodded slowly. "That's good. He needs someone like her later." As the sun dipped low behind the trees, both families sat on opposite ends of the bench. Ranger lay in the middle, eyes half closed, tail thumping gently as if to say, "This is right." In the days that followed, Olivia posted about the encounter. She didn't name the families, but wrote about a dog whose heart was big enough for both the past and the present. The post gained unexpected traction, shared widely by therapy dog groups, educators, even pediatric counselors. Within a week, Olivia received an email from the National Animal Assisted Therapy Council requesting permission to feature her blog on their official site. She stared at the email for a long time, her fingers frozen over the keyboard. Then she clicked reply. The air that morning in Evergreen Hollow carried the scent of thawing soil and wet pine, signaling the slow departure of winter. At Evergreen Paws, the usual quiet hum of daily routines was disrupted not by barking dogs or the metallic clang of kennel gates, but by tension, one that had no sound but filled the walls like static. Olivia Mitchell stood in the break room, hands wrapped tightly around a chipped ceramic mug. The words, "Dog hair, don't care," faded from repeated washings. Her reflection in the window looked older than usual, not in years, but in wear. Since the meeting between the Walkers and Rachel's family, her world had taken a strange turn, one filled not with the clear black and white decisions of shelter work, but something murkier. Ranger now belonged to both the past and the present, the boy who had raised him and the girl whose heart he had healed, and both wanted him back. Ellie had been the first to break. It happened 2 nights ago. Rachel called the shelter after dinner, her voice unsteady. She's crying in her room. She keeps saying he's hers now, that she can't lose another dog. Olivia had listened quietly, words caught in her throat. She could imagine it all. Ellie's small figure curled up, cheeks wet, clutching drawings of Ranger the way she used to hold Milo. The next day it was Liam. He showed up with Chelsea unannounced, but polite. The boy's face was pale, and he barely met Olivia's gaze when he handed her a folded piece of paper. It was a drawing Ranger sitting in a field of stars with Liam beside him, holding a leash. "He sleeps with that leash still," Chelsea whispered, the one Ranger wore. "We told him we were just visiting, but he thought maybe they'd let him come back." Just for a while, Olivia didn't know how to respond. She'd never had to be a judge between hearts before. That night, she sat at her desk, laptop open but untouched. The blinking cursor mocked her. Her blog, Ranger and the Hearts. He Connects had gained traction faster than she imagined. Dozens of messages poured in daily. People from all over the country were sending in their own therapy, pet stories, dogs that stopped panic attacks, cats that slept beside grieving children, horses that gave autistic teens their first moment of calm. One message stood out. A woman from Arizona wrote, "You reminded me why animals aren't just animals. They carry parts of us. We don't know how to hold," and then it hit Olivia. Maybe Ranger didn't need to be claimed. Maybe he could continue being a bridge. The next morning, she invited both families to the shelter. Rachel arrived first, her brows knitted with worry. Ellie clutched a sketch pad to her chest, her mouth drawn in a line, her eyes already misting over. She wore a pale yellow hoodie and boots too big for her, as if she had dressed in a rush, too nervous to care. 10 minutes later, Chelsea and Liam stepped in. Liam looked freshly scrubbed, his hair combed for once. His old Ranger leash looped around his wrist like a bracelet. His eyes flicked to Ellie, then to the floor. Olivia gathered them in the meeting room, a warm space with soft lighting and a dog mat in the corner. Ranger sat quietly in the middle, eyes moving between the 2 children. "I know this isn't easy," Olivia began. For any of us, Rachel's hand found Ellie's shoulder. Chelsea shifted in her seat but said nothing. "I've spent the last few nights thinking," Olivia continued, "trying to figure out what's best for Ranger and for both of you. And I realized maybe we don't have to choose." Both mothers looked up. "What do you mean?" Chelsea asked. "I've spoken with a few organizations, people who work with therapy animals. There's a growing idea about shared custody for therapeutic companions. It's not common, but in special cases it's working. Ranger could primarily live with Rachel and Ellie since that's where his work as a therapy dog continues, but Liam would have scheduled visits Saturdays or every other weekend, a regular, agreed-upon plan, so Ranger never loses either of you. The room was silent. Then Ellie's lip quivered. "You mean, he's not going away?" "No, sweetie," Rachel said softly, tears in her eyes. Liam's voice broke through next, and I still get to see him. "If that's what you want," Olivia said. Ranger, as if on cue, walked across the room and sat between them, pressing his body gently into both sides. The children reached out one small hand on each shoulder. The adults watched in quiet awe. Later that day, the families stayed to discuss logistics, weekends, emergency plans, Ranger's food preferences. It wasn't perfect, but it was something new, something brave. A model not of division but expansion. Olivia returned to her desk that evening, the shelter nearly empty. She opened her blog and began typing. We're taught that love has limits, that when something is shared it becomes less. But some beings like Ranger teach us the opposite, that love when divided multiplies, that a dog's loyalty can span past and present and still be whole. We've decided to try something new, something human, something hard. Ranger will belong to 2 children, and maybe in doing so he'll belong to all of us, just a little more. She hit publish without hesitation. By morning, the post had been shared over 10,000 times. The first signs of spring had just begun to lace the outskirts of evergreen hollow buds, swelling along the trees, light filtering through cloud banks with renewed warmth when the invitation arrived. It came via email stamped with the elegant insignia of the National Animal Assisted Therapy Alliance, and addressed to Olivia Mitchell directly. We would be honored to invite you, Ranger, and the families involved in his journey to speak at the Western Regional Therapy Animal Conference in Denver. Your story has touched thousands. We'd love for you to share how shared custody and emotional healing can redefine animal-human bonds. Olivia read it twice before the meaning truly settled. She leaned back in her chair at the shelter's front desk, blinking at the screen. Her mind went to Ellie's small hands on Ranger's fur, to Liam quietly holding a leash like it was a lifeline, and to the quiet resolve in Ranger's amber eyes every time he looked between them, as if he understood and chose both. It took a week of planning, school letters, travel grants, kennel papers, and far too many spreadsheets, but eventually it was done. Flights were booked. The presentation slide deck was drafted. The conference badge for Ranger Certified Emotional Support Dog arrived in the mail. The Denver air was thinner, colder, and Olivia could feel it in her chest the moment they stepped out of the airport shuttle. The hotel stood tall and glassy, reflecting the peaks of the Rockies in its windows. Inside the conference hall buzzed with trainers, families, doctors, and a dozen breeds of certified therapy dogs from tiny poodles to large, gentle Great Danes wearing pastel-colored vests. Ranger, now 6 years old, moved calmly beside Ellie through the bustling lobby. He wore a dark blue harness embroidered with therapy partner, "Do not distract." Though many people still paused to admire him, he stood tall, 75 pounds of pure muscle and focus, but it was his expression that caught attention, alert, soft, thoughtful, like a monk in a fur coat. Olivia walked slightly ahead with Rachel and Chelsea. Rachel had dressed with quiet elegance, dark jeans, a tailored blazer, her curly chestnut hair pinned up neatly. Chelsea, by contrast, wore a thick cardigan over a floral dress and sneakers. Comfortable, approachable motherly Liam and Ellie stayed near Ranger. Though the 2 kids didn't speak much, a friendship had begun to form between them. Awkward, tentative, but real. The presentation was scheduled for the second day. Until then, they were encouraged to explore the workshops and connect with others. On the first afternoon, Olivia led the group to a smaller breakout session titled Dogs and Childhood PTSD. It was hosted in a round room filled with beanbags, low benches, and thick carpeting designed to create a sense of safety. Among the attendees was a boy named Noah, no more than 9, who sat alone with a hoodie pulled over his face. His mother, a pale woman in her early 30s named Melissa, hovered nearby with clenched hands and red eyes. A conference volunteer whispered to Olivia. Noah's father was a first responder who died last fall in a fire. He hasn't spoken since Olivia nodded slowly. Ranger sat by the bench, eyes flicking toward the boy. Then, unprompted, he stood and padded quietly across the room. Melissa gasped softly, reaching out as if to stop him, but the trainer beside her gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Let's see what he does." Ranger approached Noah slowly, stopping just in front of him. The boy didn't look up. He was curled tight into himself, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around them. Ranger sat, then he lay down, and then, almost imperceptibly, he scooted forward inch by inch until his head rested against the boy's sneaker. For nearly a full minute, no one moved. Then, quietly, a small hand emerged from beneath the hoodie and rested on Ranger's fur. The whole room exhaled. Melissa covered her mouth with both hands, sobbing silently. Olivia's heart thudded as the trainer whispered to her, "He hasn't let anyone that close since the funeral." It wasn't a miracle, not in the Hollywood sense, but something sacred had happened. A bridge had been built between grief and comfort, sorrow and presence. Ranger didn't demand anything. He simply stayed later that evening at dinner. Melissa approached their table in the hotel's buffet area. She clutched a folded napkin in one hand, her voice trembling. "I just wanted to say thank you. Your dog, he gave me back a piece of my son today." Rachel stood to hug her. Chelsea offered tissues from her purse, and Olivia simply smiled because she had no words big enough. The following morning, their main panel was scheduled in the Grand Theater. A crowd of nearly 200 filled the hall, most of them holding notebooks or tablets. On stage stood Olivia, Rachel, Chelsea, and the 2 children Ellie and Liam seated on either side of Ranger. Their panel was titled "When Hearts Are Shared: One Dog, Two Families, and the Healing Between." Olivia spoke first, outlining Ranger's journey from the shelter intake to the shared custody solution. Then Rachel described Ellie's transformation, and Chelsea followed with Liam's story of loss and reconnection. Finally, Olivia invited Ellie and Liam to share anything they wished. Ellie, wearing her yellow hoodie and gripping the microphone, tightly spoke into it for the first time. Ranger doesn't belong to one person. He belongs to love. There was silence, then a wave of clapping. Not polite applause, emotional, raw, grateful. The moderator closed the session with tears in her eyes. Sometimes, the best therapy isn't about treatment plans or case studies. Sometimes, it's about being seen. Ranger sees people. As they exited the stage, several audience members approached wanting to meet Ranger. One, a man from a New York therapy training center, bent down and whispered to Ranger, "You're one of the good ones, a heart healer." That night, the conference committee awarded Ranger the Golden Paw recognition, a rare title reserved for animals whose impact transcends conventional therapeutic expectations. The plaque read, "Ranger, Bridge Builder, Heart, Healer Companion to All." The next morning, as the families prepared to return home, Olivia stood with her hand on Ranger's back, watching Ellie and Liam laugh softly together near the window. She felt the enormity of what they'd shared settle over her like a warm, weighted blanket. Ranger looked up at her, then nudged her hand with his nose. He was ready for whatever came next. The sun rose gently over Evergreen Hollow, casting long golden threads across the quiet town like a promise of peace. Spring had returned in full bloom. Cherry trees scattered petals like soft snow along Maple Lane, and the air smelled of fresh earth and blooming lavender. On the hill above the town, the Evergreen Paws Center stood newly painted, its wide porch strung with colorful paper lanterns and a banner that fluttered in the breeze. Launch Day, the Ranger Shared Therapy Program. A year had passed since that weekend in Denver, and so much had changed. Olivia Mitchell stood by the front gate, her brown hair now cut to her shoulders, framing a face no longer marked by exhaustion, but lit with quiet pride. Dressed in a navy blazer and jeans, she looked both professional and approachable, the kind of woman whose strength came from witnessing life, not controlling it. Today marked her first official day as the Director of Communications for the National Animal Assisted Therapy Council, who had helped sponsor the Ranger program's expansion into other states. But Olivia wasn't thinking about job titles. She was watching Ranger, now 6 years old, trot proudly down the garden path with a blue scarf tied neatly around his neck, his tail swinging gently behind him. On one side walked Ellie, dressed in a pale yellow dress with embroidered sunflowers and a clip in her strawberry blonde hair. On his other side, Liam, a bit taller, now wore a collared shirt and khakis, his old Ranger leash looped casually through his belt, loop as a badge of honor. They walked together in perfect rhythm, one dog, 2 children, and a bond that had only deepened with time. Behind them followed families, children volunteers, and therapy trainers who had come from across the state to attend the launch. A new wing of the shelter had been converted into a therapy animal training and family support center, funded in part by the viral success of Olivia's blog and the generous donations it inspired. Ranger and the children paused at the steps of the stage. A man stepped forward. Dr. Peter Halverson, director of the Regional Therapy Initiative. He was in his late 50s, tall with a kind smile, and a habit of pushing his glasses up his nose whenever he got nervous. Before we begin, he said into the microphone, "I'd like to introduce our youngest ambassadors, Ellie Howard and Liam Walker, who will be leading the first interactive session with therapy animals today." Ellie gave a small wave while Liam nodded shyly. Then both moved to the side courtyard where a circle of children waited, some fidgeting nervously, others clutching stuffed toys. Several dogs lounged nearby with their handlers, including a gentle-eyed golden retriever named Maisie, a shaggy doodle called Bingo, and a calm old Labrador named Tucker Ellie kneeled beside one little boy about 6 who was chewing the collar of his shirt. She didn't say anything at first, just let him watch as Ranger came closer. Then she offered him Ranger's brush. "He likes when you brush behind his ears," she whispered. "It makes him sleepy." The boy reached out slowly. Ranger blinked lazily, stretched and lowered his head into the boy's lap. From the side, Liam crouched beside another child who had been hiding behind her mother. He showed her how to give Bingo a palm-down greeting and let her lead the dog on a short loop around the courtyard. When they returned, her mother had tears in her eyes. "She hasn't spoken to strangers since December," she whispered. Later that afternoon, while the children ran free on the lawn and parents gathered around the lemonade table, Olivia slipped away into the shade of the old maple behind the shelter. She had brought something with her, a printed copy of the very first blog post she'd written about Ranger, now faded at the edges, but still warm with memory. She sat down on the bench and read it aloud softly, just to herself. "We're taught that animals come into our lives for us to save them, but sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes they arrive with quiet eyes and patient hearts and show us how to live again." She paused. Her voice caught at the next part. "Ranger came to us lost. Or so we thought. But maybe he was never lost. Maybe he was always walking toward someone who needed him." As the words faded into the breeze, Olivia looked up. Ranger had wandered over his ears, perked head tilted just slightly. He sat beside her, leaned gently into her hip, and let out a sigh. "You knew," she said softly, stroking his back. "All this time you knew where you were going." In the distance, she saw Ellie chasing Liam with a paper plane. The boys' laughter rang out freely, echoing against the wide-open sky. Children were playing with the dogs in pairs, parents talking, volunteers laughing. It was not just a shelter anymore. It was a home, not for one dog, or one child, or one family, but for hearts in need of healing held gently together by a dog who refused to choose just one. Sometimes God's miracles don't arrive with thunder or lightning. They come on quiet paws with warm eyes and steady presence. Ranger wasn't just a dog. He was a vessel of healing. A silent messenger sent to remind us that love doesn't divide, it multiplies. Through him, 2 broken families found wholeness. 2 children found their voices, and a community found new purpose. In our busy world, it's easy to miss the quiet wonders around us. But maybe, just maybe, the next miracle is lying quietly at your feet, waiting to show you that healing is possible, that forgiveness is real, and that God's love finds its way to us in the most unexpected forms. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope. Leave a comment below and type Amen if you believe that God sends the right souls, human or animal, at just the right time. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us of the grace still alive in the world. May God bless you, and may you always be open to the quiet miracles walking beside you.